Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of You're Doing It Wrong. My name is Brandon, and I'm glad to be here with you. Last month, had a conversation with my sister-in-law, Robin, and we talked about liberties. Had a really good conversation. It's a term that is really found within Christian circles, and essentially it's like, what do we have the rights to do? Usually when you think of Christianity, you think of, the people who can't curse no more, can't drink no more, can't have premarital sex, all the things that you can't do. But when you come to Christ, you realize there are a lot of things that you can do and partake in. But the point of our liberties isn't just to exercise them, but to, for the sake of the gospel, actually not have to exercise all of the liberties that we have. And so I'm more on the grace abound side, and my sister-in-law, she's, I was teasing her, calling her a rule booker. But we need those individuals in our lives just to help us stay grounded. So it was a good episode that we had. If you had an opportunity to check it out, please do on SoundCloud. I keep saying SoundCloud. It's on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and the visuals are on YouTube. So if you haven't had a chance to check it out, please do. But this month, I'm so glad to be back. Again, just wanting to have good topics of conversation to talk about things that are universal and things that we can tackle just from a nuanced perspective. So this month we're going to be talking about fatherhood. I'm a father. I'm joined by a newly father. My brother Jermel just had his son Judah back in December, right?
Yes, sir.
Let me see if I can remember the date. Is it the 28th? Dang, what is it?
Take away 2 days.
26?
Yes,
So right after Christmas?
Yeah, day after. We was in the hospital on Christmas.
On Christmas. I was close.
They didn't get to finish dinner, man.
It's time to go.
That's a good thing, though. But hey.
And that person who you just heard is Elder William Lee. We've just definitely connected as long as I've been at Vision.
Amen.
Just one of the people who've gravitated to me, always wanted to impart some wisdom on me. Just been a constant form of encouragement. He's been one of the ones who've been checking out my videos and just being a blessing to me and just encouraging me to keep going. I was like, yo, Lee, I don't want you just to be a spectator, man. I want you to be on the channel. And I was thinking of a really good topic, and I thought this one would be a good one because this man has been a father longer than I have been alive. I think he was telling he's got kids in like the past 3 decades.
Yeah.
Did I hear that correct?
That's correct.
And so he's not just a father who's been fathering longer than me, that he's got 7 kids.
7 children.
Yeah, I don't know how you still function. So I thought they would provide just great perspective on this topic of fatherhood. But how are you guys doing? How you doing, Jermel?
Good, man. Can't complain, man.
I know, and it's funny because me and Jermel, we were podcasting I guess last year going through the book, so Jermel's no newcomer to this.
Yeah, man.
So I'm glad to have him back. And it was funny too because I had another idea for what I wanted Jermel to do. I wanted to have a conversation on health with Jermel. But once he became a father, he texted me, he's like, yo, I want to do a podcast talking about being a father. So I was like, yeah, definitely got to make sure I get you here. And you, Lee, how are you? I know you're a busy man. So for you to make time, I'm truly, truly grateful for you to carve out some time, man.
I am very, very blessed just to be here tonight. And yes, we are really busy all the time. As you know, we still have 2 teenagers at the house, so we're still catering to them. Mm-hmm. But I want to give a shout out to you 2 guys as fathers and young married men. Because, see, I watch you guys. This is the reason why I want to connect with you guys. I watch you on Sunday. You don't even know I'm watching. I'm watching him as he's holding the baby. I see him holding the baby like a little football. You know, running around there. Hey, you know what I'm saying? And like he's been doing it for a while. So I'll be watching you. I watch how you spend time with your wife. And I watch how you take time with Autumn and your wife. And I'm encouraged to see how young guys are just saying, you know what? I may not have been involved with a dad in my life because I don't know you all's story, or you may not have been modeled in your lives, but I see that you're trying to really, really please the Lord in how you father and are doing husband. I think it's great, so I want to give you a shout out.
No, I definitely appreciate that, and I think that's a good place to start. All of us have different backgrounds and stories and how we were raised, and talking about this discussion of fatherhood, we've all had fathers, and again, we may come from experience where we may not have known them or whatever the situation is. But starting with you, Jermel, what was your relationship with your father, and how did that help shape you?
So my relationship with my dad is one that changed over time. Growing up, it was very difficult, very trivial. So my father, we had a conversation. Actually, after my son was born, I was trying to have a conversation. We had a conversation. My dad, I really found out for sure that I don't know what my grandfather is. Mm-hmm. So coming into being born, my dad was like, I think 30 when I was born. I came into life and he didn't have parents. He told me he didn't know who his father is. He doesn't know his name, know anything. His mom died when he was much younger than me. Probably in his early 20s. I'm 28. So my dad didn't have that example. I didn't know that growing up. All I knew was that my dad was there, and I could always see. I went to school with people that dad wasn't there. I was like, okay, my dad's there. But my dad wasn't really there emotionally. I didn't have an emotional relationship. I didn't understand anything about being vulnerable. I didn't understand any of those things. Me and my dad had a difficult relationship growing up. I remember there were times where we got into altercations, so I experienced some trauma through our experience growing up as being young to being a teenager. I remember feeling like I used to get, my dad would pop us, whoop us, or whatever, and I remember one time when he popped me, or hit me, I was like, I'm not gonna cry today, and I didn't cry. And I felt at that point, me and his relationship changed to the point where I felt like I didn't have to be told or removed or done or said anything to by him. And that was because we didn't have a strong relationship emotionally, or I didn't really feel like I had a place to go. But as I got older and I got into my 20s, I was about to get married, went through all the it was difficult. And there's still some trials that we go through now. But me and my dad have been able to come back and reconcile some. So it's been a story of reconciliation, and I'm thankful for it because it's taught me a lot as I've grown into having a son myself, that me and my dad have been able to reconcile and make effort to talk more. So it's like I see the beauty in it because he's also given his life to Christ as he's gotten older. So I didn't see that growing up, but like now he's in the church, he's serving, he's doing more, he's making more of an effort. I see that now. I didn't see it growing up, but I see the beauty in like being able to see that reconciliation and see the point I want to start at with my own son. So I've been thankful for that time. But that relationship had a significant impact on me. Significant to the point where I'm still unraveling and dealing with things to this day that affects me in my marriage. Fearful of how it's going to affect me when I'm fathering my son as he gets older, any other children that we have. So I'm still anxious about how I'm going to process it as I get older. Been having to do some counseling and matters like that, talking to brothers. So it's a lot of work to be done, but I'm thankful for the work that God has done. So if I sum it up, that's the story with me and my dad.
So you spoke on him being like emotionally not there. Like, was that something that, it sounded like a crazy question, and the reason I'm asking is I don't know if I necessarily needed that, but maybe that might be my own issue that I need to work in. Did you feel like, hey, I needed you at that time to be emotionally there for me, or is it something that you got older, you realized, man, my pops really wasn't there emotionally for me?
At the time, I didn't know. At the time, I didn't know I needed a father to be there emotionally. That wasn't something I've recently recognized that because I'm reading a book. I think Pastor Jerome, he suggested that we read it. It was called Cry Like a Man. So I've been listening to that audio book, and he's been really expressing some things. And just through the last year or two, that's where I've been starting to notice that the issue I've had with emotional vulnerability, expressing myself, talking to my wife, communicating. And now as I became a man, I started to understand that I was lacking how to express emotion or having emotional vulnerability or having an emotional relationship. I didn't know that's not what I didn't have that with my dad. As I was growing up as a teenager, it was almost a normal thing, isolating myself when I get mad, not talking to people, not saying things. I didn't know my dad just didn't know how to do it. He didn't have the skills. That there was a generational cycle of like his father not being there and teaching him that my dad didn't know. He had some struggles he didn't know because I don't know his whole story even. So my dad didn't have those skills. So at the time, I didn't know. I just was angry with him.
Yeah.
I was just pissed off. I was just mad. But as I got older, I've been able to like empathize with him. See, like, man, and I was thinking about when we were coming to podcast, I thought I was thinking about my dad, like, what I'm going to talk about. Like, when this question comes, I was, like, concerned about, well, what if I say this and my dad hears it, how's he going to feel? But my dad knows the truth of what happened regardless. Yeah. And he knows the story that we came through. But I've been able to empathize with him because I'm like, okay, my dad didn't even have his dad. I had my dad, which is him, but I can empathize with the lack of emotion or relationship there with him. So I can empathize with him on that. So it made me excited to come and talk about it more. And it feels even good and liberating to just talk about it, but that's where that's what definitely
that's what's up. Is, and Lee, because you're a couple generations ahead of us, like, I wonder, because even with Jermel saying there's a lot of similarities, a lot of overlap, was that kind of the same? I feel like, again, stereotyping, we talk about emotional disconnect, and our fathers are probably your generation, so I can imagine potentially the emotional disconnect that you may have experienced with your father. You probably just said, I am by, you know.
And pretty much that was it, because the thing is, that was the norm. I mean, coming up, I was born and raised in Washington, D.C., and my dad moved from the South to the North to raise a family. The thing is, his parents were together. They had come from a family of 10 or 12 kids, and dad was there and mom was there. They were the typical Southern family. I mean, the husband ruled and the wife did what he asked her to do, and she disciplined the kids. And when the dad said something, that was the law. So pretty much my dad transferred that same thing coming into his family. We just thought it was normal though. I didn't know it was something where it was a disconnect. He was there. He provided. We weren't believers because I didn't get saved until I was 18, so I didn't grow up in a Christian home. But he must have learned some principles early along the way, because basically my dad was a great dad. He was a great dad, but he was just like you said, he was disconnected emotionally because I don't even think he knew. I don't think he knew anything. He was like, oh, look, I thought I was doing the right thing. So what? I plucked you in the head when you said something and it wasn't right, but you got the message. So he just didn't know. It was just normal. So I really didn't struggle with that. But what you were talking about, I noticed is that when you're talking fathers and sons, there's always going to be those phases that you go through where dad is the greatest thing since apple pie. Then you become a teenager, it's like, man, you suck. You just really suck, man. I don't even want to have nothing to do with you. And then it becomes, when you get your wife and your family, it's like, dude, that dude was the wisest man I know. You know what I'm saying? It's like it changes. You go through phases. So we went through those phases just like everybody else went through those phases. And I respect him greatly still to this day. Was he perfect? Oh my gosh, no. Who is? You know what I'm saying? Did he do it all right? He'll tell you he didn't do it all right with some stuff behind it, like curse words behind it. But he'll let you know. He will let you know that he didn't do it all right. But he modeled well. And like you talk about those things where emotionally disconnected. I remember one time I had just got my license, and the day I got my license, when I left out the house, he said, "You don't drive well enough to have people in the car, so don't have anybody in the car." So I was like, yeah, okay. So I left out the house, went back into D.C. because I moved to Maryland then, but I went back out to D.C. with the fellas. And as soon as I got out there, they said, look, let's go look for some girls. And I was like, load it up, baby. So they got all in the car. It was like, the cars back then were real big. So we just piled in a whole bunch of people. So I went up to a place called Coral Hills, Maryland. Shouldn't have had all the people in the car. I made a left turn and hit somebody's car. Yeah. I hit somebody's car, so I called them. See, back then we had cell phones, so I went to a phone booth. So I went to a phone booth by a liquor store, and I said, hey, man, I called that. I said, look, man, I'm up here in Coral Hills. What you doing up in Coral Hills? I said, I was hanging out. He said, was anybody in the car? I was like, yeah. He said, so what happened? I said, I hit somebody. He said, bring the car home. Then he hung the phone up. That was it. That was the way he connected. It was like, so he hung the phone up. So I'm like, oh,
I ain't going back home.
I didn't want to. I didn't want to. I got all the way back out in Maryland. It only took about 15 minutes. So I got back out in Maryland, got to the house. He met me outside. So I had a bunch of guys with me. So he met me outside. He said, I don't want to talk to them. So I said, y'all go ahead and go sit back in the car. So he looked at me, he said, you all right? I said, yeah, I'm all right. He said, all right. I said, yeah. He said, take your black, you know what, back out there and take them home. I was like, I'm shaking up. He said, I don't care. You got them here, you take them back. Mm-hmm. So that was the way he dealt with us. That was his style, man. It was like, I learned from it, but it wasn't him being that evil father. It was him communicating to me the best he knew how to another young man that he was trying to raise. Yeah. You know, so to this day, he is my father first and my friend second.
So how did that affect you as a father?
How did that affect me as a father? I hate to confess this on the phone, but on podcast, but you pick those ways up, man. You think you won't, but you pick those ways up.
Your kids got a similar story.
Yeah, they have a lot of similar stories because all of them took me through every one of them, and I had to be the same way. You know, so my dad is just very sarcastic in the way he brings stuff to you. But if you listen to what he's saying, it's got a lot of wisdom in it, but it's sarcastic. And it's like, you know, you're looking at him like, man, you didn't have to say that way, man. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you need to listen to what I said. Regardless of how you think and you took it, you need to listen to it, you know? So that's the way he rolled, man. And I have a lot of those similarities. I'm not going to say all of them are good, but I have a lot of those similarities when I'm dealing with my sons. I have 5 sons and 2 daughters. Man. And all my sons know how to give me or knew how to give me a run. All right, so, yeah. But yeah, it was good.
Nah, and that's good. And like I said, I thought it was good to start there. For me, particularly, I've known, and I hate saying this, I feel like, was it y'all who said it that you shouldn't call it a step parent or somebody like that? I forget who said it. I can't remember who said what.
I think you said the Belts said it.
The Belts and Eric and
Bannister, they were saying someone told them not to say that because I think they've got that type of situation.
Yes, they do.
So I didn't grow up with my biological father. The only man that I know in my life is a man who raised me. Shout out to Robert because I know he watches. And it again talking about like therapeutic, where it's like this is stuff I should be saying to him directly. You know, where it's easier to like say certain things like when they're not here, which again probably stems back to that emotional kind of disconnection. But he's the only man who I've known in my life, and just him being there was huge. If it wasn't for him, I would not be here right now. My mother would be a single parent, still be living in New York. I don't know how different my life would be, but he was there. And the other thing that I knew was he always loved me like I was his, like his flesh and blood. Mm-hmm. And I think it takes a special kind of person to love somebody else's child. Mm-hmm. And that's when I learned early on that blood, it don't really make you a father. Just because you can physically, biologically conceive a kid, that don't make you a father.
Right.
You know, my father, and no offense to my biological father, my father Robert was the one who raised me and showed me what it is to be a man. And the crazy thing about it is he grew up in foster care.
Wow.
And when you talk about foster care, that's another weird thing. Like they always talk about the foster mother. Like I don't ever hear about the foster father. You know, he never. I don't think he ever mentioned anything about having any kind of father figure in his life. But and I think he would say he could have done a better job. But from my perspective, I thought he did an excellent job. Right. You know, just even though it sounds very simple and basic, just being there. Yeah. Like it's just physically being there, just in a practical sense, having a second income in the house. And I think that I give a real practical one. I don't know, you might know, I don't know if you know, when I was 5, I had open heart surgery.
You had open heart surgery?
Mm-hmm. Wow. I still got the scar and everything. And so just thinking about it in a practical sense, where I think I was on his insurance. And that's how he was able to get the surgery. And so it's like, I'm literally indebted to him because of these things. And so just having that example of that's the only man that I've ever known in my life.
He fathered you.
Yeah,
that's exactly what he fathered.
He fathered me. Yeah. And so always having them. He's the reason why we moved from Brooklyn to North Carolina, because he had friends who moved from Brooklyn to North Carolina, so they kind of influenced them to move. And so I am so indebted to him. And so, again, just trying to think like emotionally, like I don't think he ever had a problem expressing emotion, but I was never that guy who needed that. But I can see how even as an older person, because I think it's a thing that a lot of men struggle with, just having conversations and just being open and vulnerable. Right. I think that's universal across the board, that most men kind of see it like as a feminine attribute. And so it's like we've got to have on this hard exterior where it's like, I'm not going to let you know, that I was struggling.
Right.
I'm not going to let you know those things. But overall, he's been a good father, and one of the things that he shaped me, and just, he's not afraid of conflict, And I think that's good for someone who's like me, where I'm just more kind of reserved and laid back, where sometimes, like, you need to have, I got to get stuff taken care of, and that's going to, like, end in some kind of conflict. Nothing physical and nothing arguing back and forth, but just standing up and just, making your voice heard. Like, that's something that I've remembered from him, that he was certainly a management guy.
Let me interject here while you say that. You said he was in foster care, so he didn't really have a model.
No.
To even look at himself. But guess what he had? Desire.
Yeah.
He had desire to be able to father you well.
Yeah.
And you made a comment earlier where you were talking about these things that you'll be struggling with, which you will be, because we all do, because we don't know what we don't know until these kids take us through these things. So because you have a desire to be a great father and you have a desire to please God, you're going to figure it out. Yeah. You're going to figure it out. You're going to fumble like we all do. We all going to fumble all the way through. Yeah. But you're going to figure it out because you have the desire to do it. So that's what your dad had. He had desire to do it regardless if he had a role model or not.
And that's the other thing that was like kind of challenging too, because like you, I didn't grow up in a Christian household. So us as Christian now, it's like, clearly, even if we didn't have, a physical father, we've got God the Father to, look to as an example. And again, I was telling Jeremy, it's like, it defies conventional thought, because the thinking is you have a role model as a father that helps shape you into being a father. But it's like my father didn't have that, so all I can do is contribute it just to God's grace.
Amen.
That, I'm able to be here. And even though, again, none of us are perfect, but even in that, just how God was sovereign, leading me to him, and then even leading my parents to salvation, like with yours, that's always like a weird dynamic too, where you're kind of like teaching your parents certain things, especially when it comes to the word and things like that, where it's like the idea is the parent's supposed to teach the kid and raise the kid in the fear and admonition of the Lord. It's like, it's different when you get saved later in life, and your parents kind of get saved later in life as well. So
and that's exactly what was my situation too. But I always looked at it as still being, because they were my parents, regardless on how much I knew spiritually, it was never a thing that I was like one-upping them.
Yeah.
It was like, it's still my dad. And certain things that if he was really left-turning, or my mother was left-turning, I would never say, I rebuke you for this or something like that. It's like, God will take care of that. I'll let the Holy Spirit. That's the Holy Spirit's job. All I was supposed to do was just talk about the word. So I understand that challenge.
Yeah, it's even still like that for me today. Like, my dad, like, I call, like, he's got to the point where, like, when I'm thinking about something I haven't been through or dealt with, even if I know my dad may not know how to do it, or like something going on with the house or something I need to fix, I'll call him just to get some type of, we built that relationship back. Right. Grace has been there, we've been able to, I feel some reassurance. Like just asking my dad, like, what should I do? Even if he don't know. Right. He just telling me, like, saying, do this, do that. Well, I don't know. It gives some sense of reassurance, so I'm able to, like, hear what y'all are saying and be thankful for the stuff that my dad did pour into me.
Exactly.
Like, he was always there. He provided when I was younger. Now I know he had a part-time job and a full-time job.
Wow.
And he did what he had to do, make sure we ate. He took pictures all the time. So now, like, I always want to make memories with my family. So it's beautiful to see that even though there's been struggles, we can see, like, the beautiful things that our parents and dads poured into us. So it's good to think about that. And that way, just like y'all talked about, just desire and just trying. Like, I mean, like you said, like, your dad may have not had that example. Like your father figure may not have the example that we don't know the example they had, just that desire and that trying.
That's
being there, being
yes.
present. So those two things that we speaking on is really been standing out. Yeah.
Now you talked about providing, and I think as fathers, there's something when it's like becoming a father, identifies you as like, I'm a man now. There's something to that, and that's something where even in the past couple episodes, just trying to navigate through this idea of manhood, and I've kind of come to the conclusion that manhood is most fully expressed within the family dynamic, and so I've been wrestling with that because my brother Jeremy in here, he's a man as well, but how do we define manhood with someone who doesn't have a family, doesn't have a wife, doesn't have a kids? With that, and I don't know how to do that, because I'm not saying he has to have a family in order to be a man, but I do think it is fully expressed within that. So I think there's a lot of talk about manhood. It's a lot of that's assumed about manhood, but we truly really don't know what it is. But what are you guys' thoughts on manhood as it, I guess, relates to fatherhood, as it relates to being single, as it relates to being a husband? What are your guys' thoughts on that?
I mean, even to speak about, I know we talking, Jeremy not on the camera, but like, I know me and him have talked before. It's like Elder Lee's talking about that desire. Like having the desire to be that man, or to step in, or like just have that. I'm not sure, like, is a father or is manhood providing, protecting these different things, or is it emulated in like what we saw Christ do as believers? So just trying to navigate those things, but like having that desire, it seems like it's a big part of it. Cause like you have that desire, like you said before, like it's like you come back around to it. Like you come back around, even if you don't know what a man is or what manhood is, maybe you have a convoluted idea. But if you're able to just sit back and have a desire to be like, man, I want to be a good man for my family. I want to be a man if I do have a family, or if I don't, I still want to be a man for my community, my career, my job. Like I still want to like be the man that I've been called to be. If you have that desire, it seems like you'll always be pulling towards. It's better to be pulling towards the ideal of what would be considered to be a strong man than to just be sitting stagnant. It's like good to have that desire.
So what would you say, what does it mean to be a man? How would you answer that question? What does it mean to be a man?
I would say a man is someone...
That's a hard question.
It's like it's something that comes so soon, but it's like...
Just say it, like just say something to sound where you want to say something that's like...
Yeah, and I got you, because I think the general consensus is like provide and protect, right?
Yeah.
But that's usually in a family context.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't think that's necessarily exclusive, because a single woman still provides and protects for herself.
For sure.
A single man still provides and protects for himself, but it's only within that family where I guess he's the primary one. And again, as people who share biblical worldview, we see like leadership and responsibility. If we want to go to like the garden, Adam was supposed to be looking out for his wife. It's not, she was the one who ate, but it's called a sin to Adam. It ain't called a sin to Eve, because he was supposed to be looking out for his wife.
True.
And I'll give you another example. So last week, we had an issue with the car, and the issue was, it wasn't, and again, I'll just say it just so y'all get it wasn't my car. It was my wife's car. She's the one who primarily uses it. And the oil hadn't been changed. And so it got to the point where the car started messing up and she on the highway. And so she had to call me, had to go get her, drive the car to the stop or the repair shop, and the man is like, yo, I don't know how this car didn't explode upon you, And for me, it's like, I could go off the handle and be like, yo, you supposed to be checking the oil, you supposed to be doing X, Y, and Z. And it's like, no, I got to bear some of that responsibility too. Because even though she's the one who primarily use it, I should be also reminding her as well, because I've definitely been guilty of that too. But it's like, it's your car, you should have been paying attention to it. You could have cost a lot of money, but it's like, no, that some of that falls on me. And I think within that family dynamic, I've got to be a man to say, hey, I bear some responsibility. And it's hilarious too, because I got both Lees Paul and William, and then it sounds like I'm hitting the nerve that this happens sometimes. Yeah, I can't see everybody's faces, but I feel like it's in the core. But for me, that's kind of like when I'm looking at manhood in the context of family, it's like, yo, I gotta be responsible for my wife and my daughter as well too. That falls on me, even if they the ones who it's on them. I gotta bear some of that responsibility too.
I think you hit it on the head. Both of them hit it on the head, and I think because it makes it so hard for us is because we're looking at it in the context of being fathers and husbands. But when you were single, just like a single woman, just being responsible and mature is what, to me, graduates you to that manhood and womanhood. Mm-hmm. So, say for instance, they're not picking on you, Jeremy. We're just saying, Jeremy strikes me as being a responsible young man. Mm-hmm. It looks like he's taking care of his bills. He's out of state and attending school here in another state. Mm-hmm. So he's taking care of his bills by going to work. He's going to school. He's caring for himself as best he can. Mm-hmm. And he's doing all the things he needs to do to try to survive in this rough world. That is a man. Mm-hmm. If a female was doing the same thing, I would say that's a woman. Okay. So I have to write it off. To me, the definition for me for both of them, man and woman, was just being responsible. Like you brought it up, brother, just being responsible. And as far as the nerve that you said that we were here staying in the context of the marriage piece, I think that there are, according to the Bible, we have roles that we play in the household. The husband is to love his wife as Christ loved the church, and the wife is to be respectful. So, but when you start breaking those roles down even further in the home, it depends on the agreement that you and the wife have come up with. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying this, Brandon, to be in your business. I'm saying, as far as myself, anything that has to do with the shell of the house and the mechanics of the house and the cars, all of that is my responsibility. Yeah. So regardless if she forgets to check the oil, the bottom line for me is that I got to make sure all those cars are running, because I know, guess what? The responsibility is still going to fall back on Adam. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I need to know what's happening there. Now, my wife is responsible for things like the budget and raising, well, when I say raising the children, we raise them together, but when I'm at work, she's got the helm. So those are basically her responsibilities, and making sure I did come home to a clean den when the kids were younger. That's a lot to expect, but making sure that I come home to a clean home and things like that, not making light of those things. Her responsibilities are just as great as mine, but chopping those roles up is what differentiated our roles and responsibilities and so forth. But what makes me a man is, first, I trust God for everything in my home, and I lead them as well as I can. If I'm following Christ, I'm leading them as well as I can. And when I fall short, I know that I can go to him and ask for that help, and the Holy Spirit will help me. But it's a grave responsibility as far as being a husband and a father, but I don't want to go off track, so I gave you my definition, so you go ahead.
I like the point that you brought up, though, like when you were talking about how it kind of varies based on the agreement in the household, because, like, growing up, I saw my dad, he was responsible for, like, that shell of the house. Right. But I also saw my dad, because my dad didn't go to church when we was growing up, right. But every Sunday we came home, it was dinner made. Oh, shoot, or like he was like the cook, like, of the house. Right. Like, he was the griller, he was the cooker. Like, he went and got the food, made sure we ate. So, like, as I grew up and I became a man, like, I saw that as, like, a normal thing. Mm-hmm. Now, I ain't saying I'm a chef or anything. Me and my wife actually both cook. She's a better cook than me. I'm going to say that on her. But I tend to do it more. I tend to make sure, like, okay, this is what we're eating tonight. This is what we're doing. Because that's what I saw growing up. Now, some may say that that's, the one woman cooks inside and all that. But it just works for what works in the house.
Amen.
So Amen. I like that you brought that point up, because you're like, okay, this is what, because it seems, it will almost look like, well, I'm doing this inside the house and the outside. but it just depends on what's going on in your home. Because it is a lot of, it ain't easy to like, my wife stayed home with her son for like about 3 months. And I didn't realize how much it was that she was doing.
A lot of moving parts to that, isn't it?
Yeah, and I would come home and I'd be like saying stuff like out of the way, and not till I reflected on it, I'm like, oh, she really here? Like, and I would stay home with him for about, when I first stayed home with him.
How much work it is?
I stayed home with my son, my infant son, for probably like 4 hours. And I was like, man,
It's work, isn't it?
how did she do this for all these days in a row? And she's the one that's responsible for feeding him. And I'm like, man. So it gave me so much respect just being there with him for 3 or 4 hours. So, but it's just a good dynamic of how you're saying, like, that taking on responsibility graduates you into that adulthood. So I really think that's a solid way to look at it when it comes to that. Just a general way to look at that.
And it's crazy that we're talking about responsibility in the sense of marriage, but I think being a husband relates directly to being a father.
Yeah.
You know, we kind of look at them as two separate things, but I don't think they are. And one of the things that I wanted to just confess and just even admit, where even as being a father and a husband, sometimes I find it easier to love and show affection to my daughter than it is to my wife. And I think, especially as Autumn gets older, she's going to need me to see me love Mylena, because that's going to show her what she needs to look for in a man as well. And so I can be real and confess that sometimes I find myself saying, you know, hey, I love you to Autumn a little bit easier and readily to Autumn than it is my wife, and I've got to like catch myself in those things. And so I guess what I wanted to ask with y'all was, and I know you just had your son for just a couple months, and I think there is some kind of dynamic with, you know, fathers and daughters and fathers and sons, and I guess y'all can definitely speak on that because I don't have a son, where, you know, being as affectionate with your son as opposed to being more affectionate with your daughter, and that's something else that I wanted to speak on too, but primarily how a husband relates to being a father. What are y'all thoughts on that? Lee?
Well, I'll start with this. There is a difference, okay? And the difference is the way you love your wife, you're never going to love your kids that way. It was a time in our marriage where Paul and I had come to a point where it was like, we're the team. Our oldest daughter was having some problems in college, and when she came home, she wanted to just quit college. She was in her 4th year of college. It was at the end, and when I say at the end, I mean it was graduation time, and she was like, "I'm throwing in the towel right now." So when she came home with that, it kind of blew us away because we weren't expecting it. So I was trying to rectify the situation, and Paula was like, "I think you're being too hard, this, that, and the other." But my daughter was trying to divide us because she wanted to come home. That was just the bottom line. And I told my wife, I said, look, we are the team. I said, when these kids leave, it's going to be you and myself. And we're the foundation of the home. So we can't let the children come in and offset that. She got the point and she ran with it. She understood. She got on board. I say that to say, too, that what happens is you think it's easier to love your children sometimes more than it is to love your wife, but I want to tell you, when those kids grow up and as they become teenagers and grown people, that script will flip, because you will see something come out of them that you never thought would come out, especially when they become teenagers. And I don't think that all teenagers become rebellious because they want to become rebellious. I think it actually is a chemical imbalance that happens sometimes with teenagers. I just do. And the sweet little girl or sweet son that you thought that you had turns into it's like, oh my gosh, this joker, I don't know what I'm going to do with him. I don't know what I'm going to do with him. Does he hate us? Yeah. Am I beginning to hate him or her? So it's not... It's safe to say that the relationships are different, and they have you're going to treat them differently. My wife's always going to be number one, and my kids are always going to be loved thoroughly by me. but they don't hold the same spot in my heart as my wife holds in my heart. I love them, and I'm gonna do all I can to care for them, and all I can whenever, because they're part of me. They're my legacy. My wife is my lover. She is part of me. We're one.
Yeah.
So
was there ever any challenge, or was it always, hey, I can't? Because and I clearly understand you're gonna love your children different than your wife, but even like devoting as much time, because like I said, even spending quality time with Autumn, you know, I've got to make sure that I'm also spending quality time with the wife.
Right.
You know, I see, we talk, the roles are kind of reversed with me and Mylena because I work from home. So I see Autumn more often than I see Mylena. So she's around me more than she is around Mylena. And so we, just based on just proximity and time alone, we build like more of a relationship there.
Okay.
And so it's like having to make sure that, hey, I've got to take time out for Mylena. Has that ever been a challenge for you guys, or it's never ever really
it's
been a
never
challenge?
been a challenge for me because my wife is my lover and the person that I am one with. And yes, it's been times where I don't like either my wife or my kids. I mean, it's and vice versa. You know what I'm saying? But the thing is, she's always held that spot in my heart. And the kid, I don't know what, it's just compartmentalized. I forgot. Compartmentalized.
Yeah.
That's how I've done it with my kids and my wife. But again, like I said, it's a different relationship. It's a different relationship. It's meant to be a different relationship.
So maybe it's a better one. Has there been times where their time with you has suffered because you got to make time? Because you've got 7 kids, and I don't know if you had them all at the same time. It sounds like they've been spread out.
They're spread out over the 80s, 90s, and the 2000s.
So how many were living in one roof at the same time?
4, 5 living in the roof at the same time. Oh, 6 of them.
Whew.
At one time.
So even like
the struggle to get the quiet time with my wife, that's always been a struggle until now. Because most of them are grown.
Yeah.
But the struggle, we've always had to have that divided attention where she was taking them to ball games and I was taking them to ball games, or if I was at work and she had the full load. So it's always been, when are we going to get time? When are we going to get time? When are we going to get time? Because all of our time was doled out amongst all the children.
So are you able to spend individual, or y'all like group them together?
Honestly, that's a hard that you ask. He asked a good question, and this is one of those things where, as a parent, you have to say, "Wow, I'm sorry." We had to group them together. Okay, you had to group them together, and there, as a father to grown children, I've had to come to them and say, you know what, God, I know you haven't thought about this, or if you have, just know that I'm sorry that it was like this. It was just, we couldn't help it. It was, we were learning, and you guys were sometimes the test dummies, and we had to, we did the best we could do. We prayed about it, and we teamed up, and it's like, we thought we were doing the right thing, and this is no lie. They always come back and say, man, it was no big deal. No. See, we turned out to be better people for it. So it's tough. It's a tough juggle when you have that many children. It's a tough juggle when you have one child. Yeah. It doesn't matter how many you have. It's a tough thing because you've never done it before. It doesn't matter if you had a whole bunch of sisters and brothers. You've never done this parenting thing, or if you help raise your brother or sister, it's still not the same. You still don't get the same responsibility when it's all yours. When it's all your responsibility, it's a different run. It's a different run.
Because I want to have more children, I want to have a boy, is there differences as fathers raising boys and girls? I know clearly the answer is yes, but my thought, like, when I have a son, and I guess maybe you can even speak to this, like, I feel like I'm more affectionate because I have a daughter than I have a son. Have you found that to be true, or
I'll be honest,
is it different?
It's going to be a different answer from everybody. It's going to be a different answer. Believe it or not, it's been easier to raise sons than it has been to raise daughters, only for me. Now, my wife may answer this differently. And the reason being is because I had 2 brothers, and that's all we knew. My mother was she would have never been a good mother to a daughter, and my father would have never been a good father to a daughter because they were just boy-centric. They knew how to raise boys, and the way they talked to us, it's no way a female could have handled that. It's just no way. So coming into the marriage, that's basically how I carried on with my kids. Now, my first is a daughter. And the sad part about it is that, and I always say this, and I always have to apologize, and I do struggle with this with my youngest daughter, is that I never learned to father females. I never learned to father daughters well. All my kids play sports, and that's been the guy I've been, is the sports dad. So I taught them all how to catch. I taught them how to run patterns. I taught them how to catch football. So everything has been male-centric. And that, I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm going to say that's a bad thing because I've not learned to love the female like I needed to. So when I'm dealing with my sons, see, it's easy to tell a son, I say, don't come back here at 12 at night. If you come in here before midnight, a lot of things bad going to happen to you, or you stay out there. You can say that to your sons. But a daughter, if you say something like that to your daughters can, and I hate to say this, and I know this is going on public, but this is the way it is. You say these things to those girls like, I'm going to make you pay for that. I'm going to make you pay for that. So I'm going to bring you some gifts back to the house that you weren't expecting. So, and that's not that they're doing it on purpose, but they felt rejected. So because they felt rejected, they're going to find that love through somebody else. Yeah. And that's when I'm talking about bringing something home to dad, a baby, back home to dad that he wasn't expecting. So it would be good for us to, you can't answer that question now until you have that other kid, that other opposite sex. Like when you have a daughter and you have a son. Yeah. I don't know. I just know how it was for me. It is just that I think I do better with sons, and I think they're easier, but it's not that my daughters were bad. It's just that I never was a good father for daughters. And I tell them that all the time. I do tell them that. And my youngest reminds me of it all the time that, yeah, you're right, Dad. You do suck at that. And I hate to admit it, but that's just the way it is. Yeah.
And like I said, I know it's kind of difficult for you, Jermel, because your son, like I say, he just rolled over today. So you got a long ways to go. So do I, but you got a long ways to go. Do you feel, because you do want to have a girl, right?
Yeah. So I can, I'll speak to that first. Like, I definitely want to have a daughter. Because I had a little sister growing up, and I saw some of the difficulties that she grew up with. So for some reason, I've always had and then my brother had nieces. My family's mainly girls. So I always thought that I never even when I found out my son was a boy, I'm in the birthday center jumping up and down, yelling because I was like, oh, we ain't have no boy. I was convinced in my mind we're gonna have a girl. I'm gonna have all daughters. So I was convinced of that.
Yeah, that's what I was scared of, man.
I was totally convinced, but I don't know. For me, it just hasn't been. I don't know if it's how I grew up or something. It hasn't been difficult, or if it's me not wanting or me desiring that growing up. It hasn't been difficult for me to share emotion or be very affectionate towards my son. It could be because he's an infant, because he's a little baby. He was a newborn. I've seen him from the newborn to just being a baby. But it hasn't been difficult for me to show affection. Now I'm saying different things to him that I probably won't say to my daughter. I'm saying I'm being more kind of saying rougher stuff or doing little things that I may do differently. If I have a daughter, I might call her a baby girl, be a little bit. But if she doesn't like that or she wants it differently, it'll be just based on what but I won't know. Like I was saying, I don't, when she comes or if I have a daughter or if I don't know. But if I do, when it comes, I'll see. But for me, just loving him, it's been something I've enjoyed. It hasn't been a difficult thing for me to show that emotion towards him. And I just think that's just been work that God's done on my heart.
Amen.
I think that's work that he's just done on me. And my wife has been influential in that. She's been influential just even to speak to what you were talking about, the question before. I feel like I was just gleaning on the wisdom from Elder Lee because he was talking, the way you were talking about having all these children, but how you were able to put the focus on your wife. It's amazing to see that and that you're bold and you're firm with it. And you can just see the effort that you made in that. And that's where I want to be. My wife has been she's a lot better than me in being intentional when it comes to our relationship and prioritizing our relationship. We have this thing where we try to make a saying for our relationship, our family and our marriage that, okay, we're a son or a daughter first. Second, we're a husband and a wife. And third, we're parents. So we know son or daughter to God. to Jesus. Like that's where we want our first priority to be. That's where we want our identity to rest.
Right.
But in husband and wife, that we feel like that needs to be that ministry that we like cater to and we cultivate, because that's going. If we have a strong marriage, that'll benefit our son.
Amen.
Like, so that'll benefit our son. That'll benefit any other children that we have.
Absolutely.
If we're able to cultivate that marriage. So like my wife sets it. Like ever since he's been born, after the first month, like we've had like she sets it where we have a date on like a Saturday or something to cultivate a relationship, and she's very consistent in making sure our son goes to bed at a certain time. Because after that, she's like, we need to spend time together.
Mm-hmm.
We need to do that. And now I'm more on like, okay, we do. I'm trying to get better with that, so I see the necessity of it. Because I want my son to see that.
Amen.
Like as I'm thinking about, I want him to see that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't want him to be uncomfortable with his mom and dad relation. I want him to see that and be like, I want that.
Amen.
As he grows up, so that's the hope. That's the hope that I have for. But I see where it could be. Even thing, I see times where just out of my own immaturity where I may have difficult, or it may be easier for me to like, I just argue with my wife, but I can go pick up my son and not hold nothing against him. He's a baby. Yeah. That's how I see it. Like, oh, he's a baby. Oh, he ain't doing nothing. Like, even if he poop on my hand, he do whatever. Oh, it's just a baby. I can move on. But my wife, I'm holding everything against her. Like, oh, you said this, you said that, because I'm really mad at something else. I'm really upset with something else, but lacking those skills that I need to continue to develop to speak to her and relate to my own feelings and emotions. I still struggle to be able to express that, like in the moment. After about an hour of saying it, I can come back and apologize, say whatever. In the moment, it's still a difficult place to be able to be like, I love you. I'm gonna put you first. I'm gonna prioritize you. You're my queen. Like it's easy to say that after, but in the moment, I want to get better at saying it.
Right.
I want to grow and mature in that.
But you're talking. This is a lifetime thing, man.
Yeah.
You're talking about you're saying growing and maturing, and I hear what you're saying. But it's like anything else. It just takes time.
True.
It just takes time, man. And you're just like your job. It took you time to learn your job. It's the same way with learning anything else. I mean, you're going to do it. You're going to along the way. You're going to mess up. Along the way, your wife is going to mess up. All your wives mess up. Hey, I hate to tell y'all that. Women ain't perfect either, just like we're not perfect. We all messed up. We're all struggling to do the same thing. We're trying to please the Lord. And sometimes we're not going to hit on all cylinders. But the thing is, we're going to walk through those things. And like you said, we're going to learn it. Like you said, you're going to learn it because your desire is to be better at it. Yeah. So it's just a part of the walk. It's a lifetime walk, and it's a slow one. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
I think you hit on something that was super key, especially when I was talking about loving my daughter. It's easier to love, and I don't think it's necessarily easier to love. It's your kid can't do as much to piss you off as your wife can. So you actually have to make it. That's what I mean. So you can speak to it because your kids are older and they've got more, they can do things like take the call, do something that'll anger you. When I've got a toddler, the most she do is just keep poking at me, There's not as much as she can do as my wife. So it's like, even in that, it's like, is that truly even love? Because it's like, to truly love somebody is to love them without conditions.
True.
Your kid, like, they just kind of, until they can understand right from wrong, and really you're truly forced to show grace, to show forgiveness. Because my wife is an adult, so we have to wrestle with those things. It's like, you don't really got to forgive too much with a little kid. What they going to do? So it's so much easier to love them. And when you said it kind of like brought that to my attention. And my biggest, I won't necessarily call it a fear, but I think just with a girl, it's just, I don't know, for me in my mind, I feel like it's different. Maybe the best example is like, even you kind of spoke on it, where it's for my sons, I'm like, at 18, I'm kicking you out. I'm not saying it's my daughter. I want to make sure she's secure. And it's like, is that like loving them differently? And yeah, maybe it is. But I don't know. You
love them the same. Mm-hmm. It's just that your approach with them, this is not everybody's approach. Mm-hmm. Your approach is going to be different, and you're going to do it according to what their personalities are. Yeah. And I noticed that with the men in my family, the men guys, the boys, my sons, everything is you got to remember they're men, and they're becoming territorial in what they want, and this it's their way now, and they have to be directed and told, no, you're not going to do that here, and so forth and so forth. But it's just a different. Sometimes it's different the way you communicate to them than it is that you communicate to your daughters.
And I think that's
you don't love them differently. You love them the same, because I don't have any favorites. That's one thing. I don't have any favorites. It's just that what I was saying earlier is easier for me with the sons. Is just because I've just not been a good dad to daughters. My wife reminds me of it all the time. She says you need to be softer with them. You can't talk to them that way. You can't be that way with them. Now my oldest one, I can be, because she's just that kind of personality. But my youngest one is not that type of personality. She's way polar opposite of my older. She's a sensitive woman. So she can't be talked to like I can say what I need to say to my oldest daughter or to my sons. So it's going to all be dictated around how their personalities are.
And I think that's key, just treating your kids as individuals.
Yeah.
So you got to learn your kids.
You have to learn.
And I think that point that you had, I don't know if you.
No, I totally get it when you're talking about personality based, because like just what I do professionally, like working with children in the schools, I see like there is a difference in how like the young man I'm talking to, how I correct them and I say stuff to them. It's like not even a hesitation. I'm like, yo, you no.
Night day, you on them, aren't you?
I'm on them.
Yeah.
Now, at first, I'm generally not that way with the young ladies, but depending on how they are and I get to know them, I do that. But I think that's my own thing that I've like struggled with. That I don't know if it's even a struggle, but I'm quicker to be like that, and it's probably because how I've seen my sister or dealing with my sister. That I'm not as quick to like just jump on it and just everybody the same. But as time, it has been some boys that I see they didn't grow up like me or they didn't respond to stuff like that, so I've had to pull back when I can pull more on some of them. So it's like a development of like what you're understanding of different personalities. Some need a kick in the butt. Some of them don't need it because they like gonna shut down.
That's a fact.
So it's been that development of like learning like these different personalities, and I think it just relates to like what you're saying, like parenthood. And as they get to be teenagers, you're gonna have to deal with those different personalities. You're gonna have to like, it's gonna take a skill set of like, this kid's like this, they need it this way, but they don't need it that way. I gotta pull back here, I gotta pull back there.
Yes.
So I just see it's complex, but it
is complex.
It seems interesting. It just seems like it's something to really.
But you're right on. What you just said is right on. And I got 7 of them, and that's what we had to deal with. Learning how to deal with each one of those different personalities. That was good, bro. That was good.
And the thing that I like about fatherhood and having certain discussions is it's universal. Yeah. Everybody can understand what it means to be, even if you're not a father, you've got a father, or even, well, you may not have one, but you know what I mean. You can still relate. You can have a conversation whether it was positive or negative. But I thought it was definitely necessary, just given the context that we all black men here, and I think that's something that society, especially when they view black men, they don't view them in the context of fathers. It's like, drug dealer, thug, basketball player, rapper. Hardly is it father that we think of when it comes to black men. And so what are some of the challenges, you being far more experienced than us, raising black children?
Let's put it this way. I've instilled all I can instill in them concerning Christ. And I tell them that that's the foundation. Now, it's up to them to decide if they're going to walk the way they're supposed to walk. When I started noticing rebellion in my sons, let's say my sons, when I started noticing rebellion in my sons, the first thing I would do, or I had to do, was sit down and talk to them, let them know that you are treated differently and you are seen differently because you're an African-American man. And I said, so if you're going to be rebellious, if you're not going to represent Christ while you're out there, understand that the police can kill you, okay? It's as simple as that. So if you're going to be out there smoking weed, if you're going to be out there late at night in places that you shouldn't be in, just understand that the approach of the police to you is going to be a lot different, and that you can lose your life. So you're going to have to make a decision on how you're going to make this work. So I left that in their ballpark with a lot of prayer and hoping that they were going to make the right decision and not get themselves hung up in a situation where they will get killed by the law.
Now, going through that, again, and I think even wrestling with our own stereotypes where when you think of, you know, a black family, it's usually an absent father. But that wasn't the case for you, wasn't the case for me, wasn't the case for you. Is there any added pressure because you may be in a context where there are fatherless children and you may be maybe one of the only black fathers feeling any sort of responsibility to any other kids or any, not necessarily that you're gonna look out for them, but man, they may not even see any other black fathers in the neighborhood or
Right.
wherever the case is. Is
Right.
there any kind of added pressure?
It's
when it comes
not
to
any
that?
added pressure for me.
Mhm.
What I mean by that, I am the dictator of my home. So if I see something coming into my house that's not supposed to be there, I shut it down quickly. My sons understood that. They understood that. So that's what they carried with them out there. They knew when, let's put it this way, we used to have kids come over to the house and the parents would call the house looking for them. And when they called the house, and I would say to my son, I would say, this is basically with my oldest son, he just do this all the time because he was friends with everybody. So he would bring somebody home and the kid was either kicked out of the house or was in trouble at the house. So he came to our house, but I didn't even know anything about it. As soon as I found out that that child was in my house and shouldn't have been there because he had did something in his home, the first thing I would do is I'll tell my son, I said, you know I don't play or get down like this. You know I'm not going to take in a refuge when they're wrong. I said, so what you need to do is you need to take that boy back to his house and let him rectify whatever they need to rectify with their parents. So that was the responsibility I felt that I had as far as if a kid didn't have a father or so forth. I was not going to change the way I ran my home for anybody at all. No one comes in and changes that kingdom. That kingdom has to remain the same. If you're going to come, you're going to be what we had, what the way we live. You're going to if you're going to stay with me or be there, you're going to have to abide by the rules that we have there. Now, as far as, because I see what your question is, the added responsibility, did I feel any pressure when I knew they didn't have a father? No,
Well, maybe not even pressure for them, but pressure to, man, I got to make sure I'm in my kid's life. You know, just so I'm not falling into that stereotype of an absentee
I
father.
never even thought about it. It never even crosses my mind. I just know that I'm a father and I got a father well. That's it. And I'm not trying to impress anybody. It's that the thing is for me is that I got to father my kids so they can go out here and be productive and represent. Represent Christ and represent Lee Unit.
Yeah. What about you, Jermel? Because you have a son, and I feel like it's more of an added pressure just raising up a son than it is a black daughter. Not to say that they're not important, but you know, hopefully you understand what I mean.
Yeah, man, it's a dynamic I definitely have thought about from like when we found out he was a boy and then just the professional context in which me and my wife worked in the schools. Like I see, and we work with at-risk youth in the school, so we see a lot of the dynamic of fatherlessness in the black community and its impact on those children and their behavior, their choices, the things that they choose to do. So it has an impact, and when you have that perspective or you see that through that lens, it has an effect on how you think about like your child. Like, okay, I'm like, you don't want to like parts of me like, well, my child ain't gonna never deal with that, so I don't have to worry about it. But then you're trying to think in a way that like you're not trying to put it in a box, but you're trying to think more just broadly, like in the sense of like, okay, I had this child. He's just my son. He's black, but do I want to just raise him in the context that you're black and this is it? Because my wife she gets me on it because I'm the guy that wants to, in the marriage and in the home, I'm the guy that wants to go in like, you're black, this happened, this is our history, this is what we don't allow, this is what the history is, this like going hard, like that's what I want to, like that's how I see it, like just in the sense of like I'm more that guy like rah on that in the home. But my wife doesn't really see it that way. She wants him to see more him as a person first, but then understanding there's nothing wrong with your culture and who you are as a black man, growing up as a black man, letting him know that there will be some different things you're gonna have to deal with. Like the legal said, like you gotta keep it raw and honest with some truth in this. I feel like it's gonna be a time where my son's gonna need to hear that raw and honest truth. Is it gonna be when he's 7, or is it gonna be when he's 19? God willing. I don't know. But I feel like it's gonna be a time where I gotta give it to him raw honest from my perspective. I feel like that's gonna have to be, because I had some experiences myself that I'm gonna have to share with him.
Right.
If he experiences something like that's based on him being a black man, people, because there was a woman that was a sub at the school. She was talking to me about her son, like how we were just relating, like about how having a son, and she's a believer. We were just talking, and she was saying how she had a son, and he's like big. He's like 6'4", 280, 290 pounds, and how men will always get at her because her son didn't want to play football. Like, he's black, he big, he should be playing football. Like, that's the identity that people will put on her son. So I'm thinking there like, man, I don't want to like try to put this idea that like he has to be a certain way because he's black, or his dad was this way, like because his dad went out and would do stuff in the yard. He may copy, he may do things, but he don't have to be a certain way. So I have to like really be careful with myself on like wanting to just put a certain ideal on him that he may experience it differently. And I feel like I gotta find and use some wisdom in how I impact his experience with growing up as a black son. Like, allow him to know that, have that experience, that understanding, but like be very intentional and patient with how I do it. Allow room for mistakes. Like, allow rooms and opportunities for like screw ups and mess ups. Like, if he crying, he don't need to just shut up because he's a boy. So it's different things that I see that I've had some different issues with and dynamics. Like, I've seen things like when I go to the barbershop, like every man, it's just like they're pulling the kids, hitting them, telling them to shut up. It's just different things I've seen that I'm like, okay, I don't know if I want the experience to be the same. I've seen this kind of stereotypical experience that black fathers tend to have with their kids. Not just every black father, no, but it's some stereotypical things I've seen that I'm like, man, I don't want my son to have to, I don't want it to be his story.
Right.
I don't want it to be his story, so I want to be able to impact it in a way that I'm more patient, allowing more risk, allowing more forgiveness for both of us. So
I'm loving this.
That's how I'm seeing that experience with him as a black son. Like, just seeing that his brownness being expressed, but also understanding his personhood first. So
you see why I'm so I talk you guys up, because listen to all that wisdom. That's a lot of wisdom there, brother. That's a lot of wisdom for the ages that you guys are. That's a lot of wisdom, and that's good. And I want to encourage you on top of this. Whatever you do, let nothing be a secret from your children. Share your stories with them. Those stories help.
Okay.
Those stories help. The good times and the bad times. The things that you're embarrassed about. Share them with them. Share it with us. Like, man, I really hate to tell you this, but I gotta tell you. And you same with your daughters. You say, I hate to have to tell you this, but I gotta tell you this. The reason why I tell you to stay away from that guy, because I used to be the dog he is. Let me tell you how it works. This is how it works, and this is how it looks. Oh, Dad, how do you know that? Because I was the dog he was. Don't do that. You tell them the stories. Tell them. Let them know. But you've changed. You see, they see the change because they never look at you and say, I never knew you were like that. Oh my God. No, yes, you changed. God is in your life now. I used to be this way, or this is the stories. Those stories, that's why I know, honey. That's why I know, man, because I've been there, done that. And I don't want you to have to experience the same thing I did, even though it may have to, even though they may be hard-headed and still gonna hit their head against the wall, but at least you go on record saying, I shared it with them. But I love everything that you just said, everything that you both just said.
Yeah, that was real. When you said just expectations, because again, if I'm gonna like look at Shanetta, I would assume your son, he gonna be pretty built, you know? And the expectation is that, you know, hey, push him towards football, push him towards these types of things, you know, black, the expectation, you're black, you better be athletic, you know? But what if your kid ain't? What if your kid just like drawn or something that's just far-fetched from what the expectation, the norm is, and just being comfortable with that, you know? So we've got that one in on, you know, how you engage with, you know, the police, but then the expectation on what does it mean to be black, you know? And I think that was real, man.
It is. I mean, part of me, yeah, of course, like I want my son to emulate and do these things. Like, if he is a great football player, basketball, I would love to see that. You know what I'm saying? It'd be fun for me. That'd be a fun experience. I would love it. I would love to see that. I want to see that. I mean, I hope you always when you have. I've noticed that when you have a kid, you have all these hopes and dreams, and it's not so much stuff I want for myself, but it's just stuff I'm like, man, he's got so many opportunities, like so many things. He hasn't been tainted by the things I have. He hasn't been these things that haven't been thrown at him. It's so much. It makes you excited to see what could be. Yeah. For him and for his life. So, I mean, of course, I ain't gonna front. I would want to be football, basketball. I'll be out there cheering in the stands.
But like we said earlier, just knowing your child.
Yeah,
knowing their personalities. That's it. Yeah. So if he's 6'8", 230 or 260, and he doesn't want to play basketball or football, you know his personality. He wants to go and be a fashion designer. That's his personality. So you do what you do. Don't push them to be something that they're not.
Yeah. And we touched on a lot of stuff, and just having a really good conversation. Because like I said, I never know how it's gonna go going into it, and I'm glad that I had you guys just able to see the wisdom from both of you and the experience, just discussing these topics about fatherhood, and I think topics that, especially as men, we need to have, because a lot of times, just in general, we feel kind of isolated and not realizing, man, we got a lot of the same stories, a lot of the same background. We could really benefit from one another. And even with you, Elderly, you had mentioned something about it's a marathon. And I thought it was really dope that you had mentioned it, because we spoke earlier before we started recording. And just for those who are listening, these are pre-recorded, so they're coming out months after things have happened. And what I'm speaking to is I want to say it was last week, the nation pretty much, whether you knew of him or didn't know, heard about the passing of Nipsey Hussle, who was not just simply a rapper, but an entrepreneur, a father, just someone who did just really great in the community. And the name of his store was Marathon, that he was killed in front of. So that's what kind of brought it to my attention, that this man understood that life wasn't a sprint, that life was a marathon, that it would be grueling, it would be hard. And this man passed at 33, but he had so much wisdom and understanding. And even as Christians, and I don't believe that's what he confessed, but we can glean something from him in his life. And one of the things that I was greatly appreciative of, and something that I try to model myself, is how many people spoke well of him. And it wasn't just speaking well of him because he had passed, but it can vouch for his character and his integrity and what he was as an individual, because he's got kids, and his kids can look, hey, yo, I knew your father. I knew what kind of man that he was. And it's something where you don't necessarily have to sing your own praises, but some people can vouch for you and like, yo, I know the character of this individual. And so as we close, I thought it would be just a really good question of, how do you want your kids to remember you? And I'll start with you, Lee. How you want your kids to remember you, man?
The way I would want mine to remember me is, I want them to say that this man loved God, that he loved our mother, and he did everything he could do to make us the best people that we can be. And that Lee unit will be forever. That's how I would like for them to remember me.
What about you, bro?
Man, I would similar. Like, I would want my son or any of my other children, if we're blessed with them, I want to just remember me as, I want to leave a legacy for them. Practical skills, all these things, financial skills, doing all these things, leave them a legitimate legacy. And I want them to remember me first as a man of God, a man that while he struggled, he was fearless in his pursuit of Christ. I want them to be able to look at me as, because my son's name is Judah, so we always the line of Judah was like something that was like we always connected to. So we had this thing about lions everywhere, and like how lions are fearless and bold, and we always talk. It's just something we like to look at and watch. But I wanted them to remember me as being fearless, pursuing Christ, just a man that had integrity, definitely a man that loved their mother. I want them to desire marriage because of what they saw in me and their mother.
I like that.
Yeah, I want them to desire that. And just overall, I just want them to remember me as a man that was just a warrior. Like, just a warrior that didn't quit that didn't give up on his family.
Amen.
That's why, that a man that didn't give up on his family and sacrificed for his family, a man that would give up his life for his own family. Just being remembered as a man that's like seen that way, whether it happens or not. But that my kids and my family and my wife and my kids know that no hesitation, my dad would give up everything for me.
Amen.
I want to remember me that way.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah, there ain't too much to add to that. One of the things when you were talking was, my biggest thing is, like I said, not growing up in a Christian household, but now that I am a believer, wanting to impart that to my children, wanting them to know that first and foremost. But I think when we think of the gospel, we just usually think of it like in a spiritual sense and not in a holistic sense. Because Christ isn't just, concerned about your spiritual well-being, but everything. One of the biggest things, especially within the Black community, is not being financially able to leave your kids with something. I think that's something very, very important, where you can leave something apart from just debt for your kids. Just practical things where it's like, we want to devote all our time, or just look at God in a spiritual sense, but it's like God is sovereign even over your finances, man. We can't just talk about the gospel and we just mismanage money. We've got to be wise and just think not just for ourselves. And I think as parents it's so hard to not necessarily think for ourselves, but we gotta think 10, 15 years down the line for our kids. So I would echo everything that you guys have said, and just making sure that the gospel is holistic. Amen. That I'm caring about not just your financial well-being, your physical well-being. Making sure just small stuff like that, taking care of yourself. And taking care of your health. Like my mom, she always make me eat vegetables and stuff. And I'm like, yo, what's going on? But once you hit a certain age, and you're like, man, I need to start eating some vegetables. I need to take care of myself. And I think that's really huge, taking care of yourself for your kids. Because I need to be here for them. Just small things where it's like, I want to make sure, just know all this theology and all these things, and I look through just church history, and a lot of these guys died really early, died from depression, died overweight, just died just for these reasons. It's like, man, you're so revered as a theological mind, but you didn't even take care of yourself.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
So I would echo all those things, man. And I'm grateful for you guys coming and just discussing the topic about fatherhood. Just from what I'm getting, it's like, this conversation like this is needed. We can come together as men and just talk about fatherhood, and not just have to be those in the same generation. Because I guess you see that modeled in what Timothy. The oldest teach the younger. Absolutely. And a lot of times we keep the older at arm's reach, not like, there's a wealth of wisdom right here. And a lot of times they want us to come with open arms. So again, I'm just grateful to have you guys here and just discuss this topic of fatherhood. Just talk about our struggles. Talk about, man, just you admitting, man, I struggle at parenting daughters. How many men can be open and admit, man, I'm not that father of my daughter, and it's like, for me who has a daughter, wanting to learn and say, man, what can I do better?
Amen.
As father and my daughter. But I'm super grateful for you guys just being here and just taking time out just to have this much needed conversation. But for you guys who are listening at home, whether you are a father or aren't a father, like I said, what I pray that you can take away is, number one, that, and not to get all cliche, that God is our father. Seeing that that's the example that we're to look to, and that's definitely something I wanted to talk about, because I think how we relate to our kids as fathers is how they kind of view God.
No, it's absolutely the way it is.
And so there is a greater responsibility on us, where I'm just like, man, I just constantly mess up, and God just shows grace upon grace upon grace upon me. And when my child does the same, I've got to be mindful of that, and I just pop off, as much as I really, really want to. So for those who are listening, I hate to hit you with the cliche line, but you do have a father, whether you have him biologically, and you can look to him, and this father has given up his most prized possession to be in a relationship with you, and just understanding that. But Again, guys, just so grateful. I want to give a special shout out to my brother Jeremy, who is helping behind the scenes. Just something so simple as pushing the button, and Miss Paula Lee for helping as well. Grateful for you guys. But next month, I have no clue what we're going to be talking about, but by God's grace, we'll be back next month. But again, I don't know if you guys had anything y'all wanted to add in closing before we get up out of here.
Man, I just appreciate you stepping out, being bold, being vulnerable with your craft and coming out and doing this, man. It's really encouraging. It's a good space. Like, it's a good space to come and talk, man. I really appreciate you stepping out and even seeing us as guys that you wanted to come on and do that on your show. So I'm just thankful, man. I really appreciate you doing that, stepping out. It's encouraging to see you come out and do that and use your gifts.
No, I appreciate that.
And I would like to say and echo the same thing he just said. This is a thing. This is important for the church, period, because we're always trying to be clinical in everything we do and say, and people look at us like we don't have issues and we don't struggle. But the bottom line is we're just like everybody else, brother. We struggle, we have issues, and it's good that you're being real with these topics that you're talking about. And this is what people want. This is what other believers want. They want real topics with real answers instead of anything that's super spiritual that they can't apply. So it's good. The word is here, and we're telling them how to apply it.
Absolutely.
So keep doing what you're doing. Keep up with these real topics, keep up with these real issues, and keep bringing people in that's going to address these issues truthfully, biblically, and be themselves and be real. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you for having me out.
Thank you, guys, and thank you for listening. We are out. Peace.
Not a lot like them, but a lot like me. Couldn't do the right thing, didn't know Spike Lee, so I walked the long road. I know just what I say. Damn, y'all went far, but yo, that's the wrong way. So understand me when I say I'm trying to take it back. And though we all are work in process, doesn't negate the fact that y'all.
What you talking about? Got me walking out. They ain't saying jack.